Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing the support tier list for 1120. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Come by, check out the stream on Twitch, starting around midnight Eastern Standard Time every night, usually going until about 3 or 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very friendly, chill community. We'd love to have you. So we're no longer streaming on YouTube, only on Twitch, but we're still adding tier lists and other standalone videos just like this on YouTube. So be sure to like, subscribe, and check all that out. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. All right, so I shuffled around the tier list a little bit, but you're going to see a lot of the usual suspects. The most conspicuous one that I bumped is probably Blitzcrank. I'm sure this would be no surprise if you've been watching the channel at all. I've been winning a ton on this champ lately, and he has had a high win rate in solo queue for quite a while. He did get a buff. I don't remember when it was, fairly recently. It wasn't like a super significant buff. It was okay. I think he got a little bit of extra armor or something. Maybe it was a little bit of extra damage on his E. But the big thing that's brought him back into prominence is that people just aren't playing tanks anywhere, hardly, except for support. Support, they're playing tanks sometimes. But in other places, they're not playing tanks. And that means that almost everybody's a good grab target. So that's really good. The other thing is a lot of the power right now in the meta is lifesteal. So you're seeing shield bow, gore drinker, sometimes bloodthirster, and those items are good in longer fights. But if you just pull someone out of position and you can blow them up almost immediately, then they're not going to get a lot of value out of that lifesteal, right? And of course, his ultimate does break shields as well, so that it breaks the shield first and then it applies the damage. So that's obviously going to be very good against Sterix and shield bow, which are both really popular items. So he just fits in really well with what's going on in the meta right now, and he snowballs so hard. So you can get really far ahead early on just by zoning people off of the wave. And if you actually land a hook and kill somebody early, obviously that's good. But just the zoning them out and just building up that slow push to crash into their tower makes it very hard for the enemy to CS. It gives you opportunities to roam and perhaps, go make a play middle or go get some deep vision in the enemy jungle, go get dragon, contest scuttles. This gives you all the good things that you want to support a lot of the time. There are a few different builds you can go with him. I'm fond of the Aftershock build and going tanky on him. And the main reason for that, and it can be a little hard to understand that if you haven't played Blitzcrank a lot, and obviously I'm not like a super expert on him. I've had like 70% win rate over 30 games on him over the last week or two. But you can do a squishy build, and he does have really good AP ratios. Like his Q has 120% AP ratio, his R has 100%. So you can do something like an Everfrost is the way I would go if you wanted to do AP, just because you get a little bit more CC you can chain together. It does add more damage. It does give you the CDR and a lot of mana. He loves all of those things. So it is very tempting to go Everfrost, and Everfrost does have a decent win rate with him. It's not like it's horrible, right? It's about 53%. But one of the better things you can do as Blitzcrank, especially in kind of the mid game, is just hold onto your hook and run up and try to punch them first with your E. Then you wait on them to use their dash or use their flash or whatever, then you go for the hook. So that's one of the ways that you can really take a lot of the variance out of Blitzcrank, is you use him almost like an Alistar, where you're just running up. You don't have that same gap closer, the same speed, but you will catch them most of the time if you just run at them when you activate your W with Moby Boots. And in order to do that, you're probably going to have to, take some hits to the face while you're trying to do that, right? Or if you pull in a very heavy damage dealer, you grab that, 5-0 Talon or something, you want to make sure he doesn't blow you up immediately if you pull him over a wall. And just being tanky in general is really strong in the meta right now, because sometimes you just need to stand in front of skill shots. You just got to, soak that Ash Arrow, soak that Thresh Hook, whatever it is that's coming in to threaten your backline. It's very useful just to be able to stand there. And it makes it a lot safer when you're trying to ward. So when you're going deep in their jungle, you're trying to get that vision, or you're trying to sweep out vision, or whatever it is, if they can't one-shot you instantly with different things and your teammates have time to come support you if you get jumped, that's very valuable as well. So I think just being tanky is so important in this meta for the reasons I just mentioned as well as just no one else is playing tanks. So if you can be that person that can soak some of that threat, that's a really big deal. And he does have pretty high base stats. I don't have him here, but I'm almost positive he has like 44 armor. He's like maxed out on early armor. His health per level is pretty good. He does have that passive where 30% of your mana turns into a shield when he drops below, or maybe it was 20% of your mana once you get below 30% health. Something like that. He gets an effective shield when he gets to really low health. So that is really good. So I just like him. I think he matches a lot of the meta. He's extremely good at punishing people and making plays, especially around vision too. That's one thing that I've noticed, is just really appreciating that if anyone tries to come sweep a ward and you're in the vicinity and you grab them, it's probably a kill. It's almost always going to be a one-shot. That's another thing that I forgot to mention about AP is you're already one-shotting him. That's the thing. If anyone's around and you grab somebody with a hook, if they don't immediately flash a wall or something like that, they're going to die like 90% of the time. Unless it's like Sejuani or something that's like super tanky, they're probably going to die anyways. So the Everfrost really doesn't add that much because your hook is already a one-shot. So that's another thing to consider. It's also far more expensive than going something like Locket. It's 3,200 gold. So the stats are good, but it does put you behind in terms of momentum as a support player. So I do like the Aftershock build, just Aftershock Demolish. This third row is kind of situational. Conditioning's better for late game. Second Wind is good against Poke. Bone Plating good against All In. And then I would either go Overgrowth or Unflinching. I'm not sure what's up with Revitalize. I guess if you go Locket plus Redemption, maybe that's okay. But just one of those. And then I really like Zombie Ward a ton. Oh, the camera's acting up there. I really like Zombie Ward a ton just because, Vision is so strong for the reasons I just mentioned. It enables your hooks to be much more powerful. So I'd probably go Zombie Ward and then the Relentless Hunter. Although, you can go Biscuit Delivery. That does help out with mana. If you do want to go into this tree, I would probably go Hex Flash. It gives you some extra angles, lets you escape from some things. So you get into a hot situation, you need to, quickly blink over a wall. I think it just opens up a lot more doors to go Hex Flash. So, Warp Tonic is okay. It does allow you to run in and, get in there a bit faster. So, it's okay. But in general, I think that Zombie Ward is just supremely powerful on him just because of how well he leverages the vision. So, I'd rather have Zombie Ward. And then as far as items go, I really prefer Locket. It's just a good all-around item. It gives you that extra utility that you're kind of missing as Blitzcrank in team fights. Yes, you have a sturdy body. You have good burst damage. That knock-up's actually pretty good. A 1-second knock-up that ends up being on a 5 or 6 second cooldown is actually pretty solid. It's a little bit better even than Leona's Q because it's a knock-up and, interacts with a bunch of different champion abilities, isn't reduced by tenacity. All that kind of stuff. So his E's pretty good in team fights, but this just kind of makes you a lot more relevant, protects your team from burst damage, Canes, Talons, Zeds, that type of stuff. So it's just all around solid. It doesn't have mana on it. That's kind of the only bad thing, but you're going to be going back a lot as Blitz anyways. You're going to be running out of mana anyways, and you're going to need to refresh your wards and all that kind of stuff. So it's not that bad. Shrelia is popular. It does have a higher win rate. That movement speed is good. You do make great use of the ability power. You're just a lot squishier, so you have to be careful. If they don't have a lot of assassins, then maybe you can get away with it. It was nerfed a few patches ago, so it's all right if you do want to go for those engages, but Blitz can run in and punch him in the face, but sometimes he just hooks people over walls too. In the Shrelia, it doesn't matter if you hook him over a wall, but it does matter for running up and punching him in the face, so it's a pretty good item. I think mobility boots pretty much every time. Swiftness boots are cute that they do interact with your W speed reduction. It doesn't affect you as much, but I would just rather get maximum speed and run around the map and try to make plays, so I'd probably just do Mobies. And then second item, there's a lot of different options. I think Deadman's has been really popular, and I tried this out. It does give you a lot of extra movement speed to get around the map, and it gives you the tankiness. It doesn't give you the CDR, which is okay, but let me go ahead and X out of that. So it doesn't give you the CDR, it doesn't give you mana, but the rest of the stats are pretty solid, and this is really good if you're going to be, rotating a lot, trying to deal with split pushers, Trinamirs, Fioras, that type of stuff. This can be really handy. Frozen Heart's good if they have a lot of attackers. I find myself getting Knight's Vow quite a bit, just, again, to help protect core backline people from assassins just because you don't have a lot of tools in your kit to do that. So it helps kind of fill that gap out. Thornmail is okay, but again, like Grievous Wounds, it's not that big of a deal because usually you can just blow them up if you get them with a hook, but sometimes it is going to be useful. And then Zeke's, again, adds a lot of damage, but they're probably dead anyways. So it does have a nice suite of stats on it, like the health, armor, mana, haste, that's all good. But the convergence doesn't matter as much. So it is nice, but I'd rather just go like Knight's Vow, Dead Man's, or Frozen Heart a lot of the time. So overall, really strong champion. Just wanted to spend some time talking about him because he's my newest sort of champ that I've bumped up quite a bit. Okay, Leona is still really good. Her win rate in solo queue is not as high, but definitely in pro play. I mean, last time I looked, it was just like ultra dominance. I think she'd won every single game. There's not a lot new here in terms of oh, Amumu did get some wins today. Okay, he was like 0-3 yesterday. But Leona's 9-1 at Worlds. Now, Worlds is not the same as solo queue, obviously, but she's just really good. She has a ton of CC. The big thing with Leona is uptime, right? Her cooldowns are so low. You know, her Q ends up being like 5 seconds. Her E can get down to 6 seconds. Then her R is a 90-second cooldown. She's extremely tanky in the early game with her W. Gives her lots of base armor. Reduces the attack damage on a bunch of different abilities that are coming in. So tons of damage, tons of aggression early. And she can go through minions. That's one of the biggest things in lane is she's always a threat. She doesn't have to look for hook angles or anything like that, like Blitzcrank or Thresh. She can just stand in the middle of the minion wave and just threaten squishy champions anytime, anywhere. The big drawback with Leona is she goes all the way in. So it can be easy to get baited for a counter gank. It takes away opportunities to threaten people under tower unless you want to go all in and you're committed to taking those tower shots. Whereas like Blitz and Thresh can just kind of hook people and maybe pull them out of the tower to do some damage. So it does take away some angles. And if you can engage on people over walls, but then you're stuck there. If the situation goes south, you're probably going to die. So she's like the most aggressive all-in option. But she's probably the best at disrupting backlines because her ult, her E, all of that goes through people. So you can't body block her out, right? You can't just stand in front of her and hope to protect your Aphelios. You're actually going to have to try to peel her. And she takes quite a bit of resources to kill. She's very tanky late game. So if your team is fully committed to the fight, if they're organized, if they're making good decisions, if you're making good decisions, then she can still be super strong. And it's going to be the usual suite of tank items. It's going to be Locket into, you know, one of the other items I mentioned. Zeke's is a little bit more useful on her because she does do less damage than Blitz and she doesn't pull people out of position. So that is a pretty decent option. And then Thornmail is another one. She's probably going to be involved in longer fights. So, and her cooldowns are already pretty low. So CDR is good on her, but it's not as good as it is on some other champs. And she applies a lot of CC with a lot of uptime. So having that Grievous Wound option can be pretty good on her. But yeah, she's still going to be very, very solid if you can find those right engage moments. And then we have Rakan. And I'm going to end this pretty soon. I do need to make this about 20 minutes. I just want to spend a lot of time on Blitz because he's new as far as like very high priority on my list. Rakan, same drill. Very flexible champion. Very strong. You just have to learn how to make the most out of his kit because he does have so many different options, so many different combos. You know, you can go in just flat with your W, just run at him. You know, ult, W to engage. You can shield to allies, then W. You can double shield, then W. There's a lot of different things you can do with him. And just kind of learning his geometry, learning his limits is one of the really hard skills of Rakan. But Rakan is unique as an engaged champion because he doesn't have to build tanky if you're positioning him properly a lot of the time. So he can get away with getting more team utility items. So he can get stuff like a Shirelia's really comfortably. I mean, Blitz can get it too, but it's even better on Rakan because you're not going to be getting hit as much because you can go in and get out at the same time. So running your whole team in there is very useful. And then he can also get Putrefier, which I think is the best Grievous Wound item in the game. It spreads around really well with Font of Life. Anytime that you CC somebody and anyone on your team auto-attacks them, they're going to get the Grievous Wound buff. And he really loves all the stats on that. The AP, the ability haste, the mana regen, just everything on Putrefier is really good. And it's only 2,300 gold versus something like Thornmail's 2,700. So his first two items are phenomenal. Probably some of the best two you can get on any supports. And then he does have other options as well. So he can go Staff of Flowing Water, Ardent Censer, if you want to go a little bit more on the AP utility side. Or he can also get things like a Knight's Vow if you want that. He can get Zeke's if you want that. So ton of different options. And just really mobile. Like, it's very hard to kill this guy. He gets away from almost everything. He's really hard to dive. He complements a lot of dive champions out there. And he has a really high scaling shield as well. A lot of people really underestimate that shield, but it's 140 per application. So he can get up to 280 shield, which is going to be really amazing. And it's got a 1.6 AP ratio, so he does scale very well with AP. So I think he's really good. You have to watch out if the enemy has a lot of CC. So especially some weird champs like Poppy and Vhagar that have like these zones of control. He's also not phenomenal against Vex, who's really popular right now, because every time he jumps around it's going to empower Vex. So definitely watch out with the Vex matchup. Not in support, she's not that great, but in team fights, when you see her, and she comes out of mid lane, she can be pretty strong. So Kron's good. I've been trying out the mobility boots a little bit more lately, and I think that's pretty solid. It's got a higher win rate than Ionian's. It does allow you to, kind of get around the map, make plays, control vision a little bit better. So, try it out, see what you think. I still think Ionians are pretty good, but mobility is definitely worth considering. Okay, last few champs here. Lulu, nothing much new going on here. I think that she's probably the best overall enchanter just because she empowers your teammates so much. She gives out that movement speed, which is really clutch for helping people engage. We are seeing Hecarim and Udyr getting buffed on this patch. They love movement speed. So she works really well with those types of champs. Her ultimate's good. Gets around Grievous Wounds because it's an infusion of health. That knock-up is definitely very relevant for things like Samira or Yasuo on your team. And just being able to stick to people and having that extra slow on the ultimate is really handy as well. And it's on a pretty low cooldown. So that is good. And she's going to be at her best if you have a hyper-scaling ADC. So an ADC that wants to attack a lot. So like a Vayne or Kog'Maw, Twitch, those types of champs. You can play her with stuff like Jhin and Ezreal, and it's not horrible, but you really want someone that's going to be able to leverage that extra attack speed that she gives out off of her W, and the extra on-hit damage, which is about 80 on attack damage in the mid-game, which is a shocking amount of damage. It's a lot. People really underestimate it. So I think she is very solid. She's not going to save you from like a blitz hook or something like that. Probably you're still going to die most of the time if blitz hooks you or blitz hooks somebody else. But she can get around a lot of the other engaged champions in the mid to late game. So, if Nautilus hooks somebody, one of your Gore Drinker Sterix users or something like that, you can probably help them get out of that with your shield and your ult and just the other utility you bring to the table. I think Shurelya's is probably still going to be the best on her, although Moonstone is something, if you think the fights are going to go really long, that could be okay. And then I'd probably just go Putrefier most of the time for the reasons I talked about with Rakan. She loves all those stats. 60% Grievous Wounds is a big deal in the meta right now. So I think she's overall pretty solid. Nami is another one who's kind of risen to prominence a little bit more lately, particularly her combination with Lucian in the bot lane is very strong in the early game. And there are a few other combinations as well where you can really leverage that extra damage that she does off of her E in the early game. So she did get a buff. I think it was, I can't remember which ability it was to. Might have been to her W. But overall, she just has really nice trades in the early game. As long as you don't get hooked, you can just walk up, trade right through the minions. You don't have to have a skill shot. Kind of like Leona, you're just always a threat. Your bubble goes through minions. Your W goes through minions. She doesn't scale as well as some of the other champs into the late game, but games are a little bit shorter these days. Usually supports only have like 2 items because they have less economy than they used to have a few years ago because they changed the warding items around. So she doesn't get outscaled as hard as she used to against things like Sona and Soraka, although she can still get outscaled by them. But really good kind of skirmisher. type of champ in the mid game. If you want something that's got the utility, that's got a little bit of sustain, has a little bit of engage, Nami's going to be a good fit. And then Nautilus, still going to be really strong. Has some of the lower base stats for tanks out there. I think he only has 36 base armor. His health is also a little bit lower. I don't remember exactly what it is. And his W is a bit of a weaker steroid than it has been, or than compared to other champs as well, like a Leona. So it's okay. It's just the shield's not phenomenal, and you don't max the shield, so you are going to be squishier in that mid to late game most of the time. I like maxing E. Some people max the hook, but either way, you're not maxing the shield, so he is going to be a little bit squishier. He does have that open field hook, which is very nice. Very massive hitbox. Does not have a wind up, so second only to Blitzcrank in terms of threat, I think, open field. It does not go through walls, however, so that takes away a lot of your really good catch angles. If you get good vision, you can't leverage it as well as a Blitzcrank because you can't hook over walls. You can use the hook to get away, and you can do some cute mechanics with that, like if Blitzcrank hooks you and you throw your hook at a wall at the same time, you can pull yourself out of it. So there are some cute interactions with it that can be cool. But it's mostly you're just playing him for that guaranteed ultimate. It's very nice. The only way you're getting around that is with an hourglass or a bubble or something like that. So it's very, very strong. It's really hard to outplay that, especially against some of these mobile champions, Vayne, Lucian, Ezreal. So a lot of stuff that's hard to hit with traditional skill shots, he's going to be able to get them with those missiles. So I think that makes him powerful. And his AoE teamfight damage is pretty strong if you have enough mana and you're able to spam E in team fights. And he wave clears pretty well to help you get priority to threaten things like Dragon and stuff like that. So I think overall he's pretty solid. Some other notables here. I think that Pyke has gotten a little bit better just because Umbral got lowered in cost, or they lowered the cost on Umbral, I should say. So that helps him control the vision, make some more picks. His items are a bit more expensive. He does require a bit more of a snowball, and he's not really that tanky traditionally how people are building him these days. But overall, I think that he still can be pretty good. Thresh is still alright. His win rate's lower. It's like 48% in solo queue. But if you're a master on Thresh, he can still work. He has hooks. He has disengages. He still has lots of versatility with his items. So he can still be pretty solid. Sona still has a high win rate. I just don't think enchanters are going to be phenomenal right now. Overall, I feel like if you really are taking advantage of the engages, of vision control, and you're just really trying to own the game, I just would rather play some kind of engage champ over Sona. But she can work if your team has engage, or if you have ways to just force a 5v5 fight, and you can get out of lane phase without dying and get 2 or 3 items. She is still going to scale extremely well. One of the most notable ones that's lower is a Mumu. I think this has really been one of the more overhyped champions in a long time. I tried him out. He's okay. I get it. He does a lot of damage in the early game with his Qs. His ultimate looks powerful on paper, and it is in a lot of situations, but it has a really high cooldown, and the higher the elo gets, the more a lot of people will dodge that ult. And his W and his E just really don't do very much in the mid to late game. So he's a very early game pressure champion, in my opinion, kind of like the old Pantheon, even though their abilities are very different. I think you have to snowball, you have to get ahead. Anecdotally, I feel like I've smashed him every time I played him in solo queue. Every time I've played against him. Every time I've played him, he feels like he has his moments where he can be really strong, and it's probably I'm just not good enough on him, so I haven't played him a ton. But they did nerf him really hard this patch as well. That his bandage is 70 mana at all ranks, so to use 2 bandages early is 140 mana. So that is a lot. You can still kill him. He does like all-ins anyways, but if that all-in fails, if it's not a full-out kill, then you're definitely going to be down a lot more resources now, because it was like 30 mana. So they more than doubled the cost. So it's pretty significant. I think his win rate will still be okay. It'll be like 51, 52%. But in my mind, there are going to be some better options. And I guess that's about it. Like I said, I do want to keep this a little bit shorter. I think Braum is coming up a little bit. My win rate on Braum is less than stellar, but I think that if you do have a team fight comp, he can be okay. But he does have a hard time starting fights, so that's kind of an issue. Rel is okay. Pretty good peeler tank. Very good against Rakan. So I think she's probably my top end. Like, doesn't have a phenomenal engage. It's okay. But is a very good peeler tank type of champion. So she's all right. Morgana is going to be very good against a lot of these engaged champs, but she's going to be weaker against enchanters, weak against Mikhails, weak against people with hands that can dodge her skill shot. I mean, I guess you could say the same thing as Blitz, but Blitz's hook is so much faster than Morgana's Q is. But anyway, she's alright. She's playable. She's a good counter pick against engaged champs. But anyways, okay, that's going to be it. Thank you all very much for tuning in. As always, I appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day.